Wait a minute.
Okay.
This is the Edition Unfiltered podcast.
So, at some point in our lives, we come across an identity crisis, a point where we don't know who we are and we get stuck and confused about how we fit into this world. And today, I have Nayli, a service designer who has worked with Fortune 500 companies, one of them being Adidas, is here with us today. Very grateful and for her being here today, and very grateful for her working with Adidas because that was a field day for me and my family. We took advantage of the discounts that she got left, right, and center. But other than that, she is one of a kind friend, and I'm so grateful to have her here.
I think you must have 30 pairs of Adidas shoes by now.
You know what the sad part is? That I actually don't have a single pair. It's all just my cousin and my sister. I didn't get anything from Adidas. I just got them stuff, which makes me sad. But
Yeah, no, you should have taken advantage while it's still
I
there.
did. I did. I took advantage for them. I think I made the mistake of letting them know that you work there.
I remember.
Yep. All right. So tell me, what have you brought for me? The word of the podcast. What is it this week?
Okay. And the word of the podcast is schmuck.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. It's the word because first of all, just say schmuck. It's like it's
Schmuck.
fun to say.
Yes, it is schmuck. I like it. I like it.
I know. I didn't know about that word. Like I just heard somebody say it in a meeting and I was like, oh, that sounds like a fun word to say.
Wait,
And then
hold
like
on.
I started
Somebody said
Yeah.
this in a meeting?
yeah.
That's just okay. Go on.
Somebody said it in a meeting. And then like after that, like I heard like a few people use it around, but like the way I heard it was people would be like, oh, look at that schmuck over there. And I legit until today morning thought schmuck that like a person, like, look at that guy over there. And then I Googled it today. Because,
Right.
I was like, I at least got to know I need to know properly what this word means because I'm going to bring it on this podcast. And I learned that it means a foolish person.
Wow.
So I'm so glad I never used it in a meeting or anywhere in public,
Yes, that
because
would
I
have.
didn't know. I didn't know it meant that.
I mean, I know I've heard this word before. I think I used this in school, but I
Yeah.
didn't actually know it meant foolish person per se, but I did know it was an insult. So at least I knew that.
Yeah, I had no idea. I just thought it was like a normal English word.
All right. So our job for this word is we have to put it into a sentence while we're having this conversation. And if you somehow manage to say it first, but it has to be with ease. It can't be a forceful word. All right. It has to just slip out
Okay,
of your mouth.
okay.
Okay. And if you say it first, you get a little
Mhm.
something, And if I say it first, then, well, I just say, I just get a yay.
Okay.
But that's what we have to do. All right. Now, when it comes to this
Mhm.
topic, tell me, have you ever found yourself in a situation where you are having an identity crisis?
Yes. I have faced I feel like a very serious case of it.
Mhm.
And I think it happened with it was one of those things which was like inevitable with everything going on in my life.
Uh-huh.
So to give you context, so I've been born and raised in Kenya.
Yes.
And then when I was 16 years old, around 16 years old, I went to boarding school in the US. So I
Mhm.
got a scholarship, went to boarding school in the US. And then I completed my last 2 years over there. So my junior and senior year over there of high school. And I was so young, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
When I left.
16. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like I was so young when I left. And that's the years of your life. I think it's the most formative years of your life. When you start gaining your own opinion and
Mhm.
discovering who you are as a person. But I didn't have an edge here. So what happened is I went to boarding school for 2 years. And then after that, I went to college, university, whatever you want to call it. I went to Los Angeles, right? So when I was in college, around my second year, towards the ending of my second year, I started to
Uh-huh.
have an identity crisis. And what I mean by there was a lot going on. The first thing is I left when I was so young. So it happened 4 years after I left.
Right.
My best friend at that time, she's like amazing at comedy, and she transferred out of my university because she like found a course in
Uh-huh.
another university that was like perfect for her. And like, until that time, like, I
Mhm.
hadn't really like branched out or made that many friends. Like, it was just always like me and her, me and her.
Right.
And then when I was like, oh my God, she was leaving. And I feel like all that came together, and just all these other things. And that's when I like experienced identity crisis. And by that, what I mean was like, for me, it was not like an identity crisis as to like where I fit in this world.
Right.
It was more of like an internal identity crisis of
Mhm.
like, who the hell am I? So I feel like what happened to me was we like growing up in Kenya, we come from the Indian society in
Yes.
Kenya is not really the most like it doesn't really encourage you to take risks, discover who you are. It's very much like you have to follow a straight line.
Right.
There's no room for experimentation. There's no room to like even have your own character. For me, I like grown up. Like I had like good grades my entire life. Like
Mhm.
I mean like since second grade, I was literally like always top of class.
That's
Always.
amazing.
Like
That's first of all, I think you need to pat yourself on the back for that because that has never been me. My mom wanted so badly for me to be the first, but I was just not. I didn't care. I didn't put any effort into it. I'm telling you, I was so bad at putting effort into it. She really thought I was going to become a loser for the rest of my life because I just wouldn't. But I think you deserve a pat on the back for that.
well, no, Jill, you didn't get top in class and you're not a loser, so there's no correlation.
I agree there is no correlation, but that sense of
There is no
putting in
correlation.
so much effort to but top of the class is a big deal in Kenya. Like you're top of the class and out of how many? Like 100
There are many. There are like
students?
100 people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's incredible. You have to put in a lot of amount of work to be top. So I think even if there's no correlation of success or anything, I think you just deserve a pat on your back because that is something that not even just I think you deserve an award. You know what? I'm gonna get you an award. Let me just say this on a live, not live podcast, but Naily will get an award from me. I'm gonna go buy one from
No, no, no.
no.
I think you would pause at that if I went on with my story. Like that's the shit that made me like hate myself, you know? It was like so much pressure.
No, yeah, pressure. I
But let
understand the
me wait, let me
pressure.
explain to you. It's like it was so much pressure to always be at the top. So I was always at the top, right? Always number one. I was always like well behaved in class. Like I wouldn't go cause issues and stuff. But so people saw me, right? This image of like, yeah, Nelly is like good. She's like hardworking girl,
Right.
always top of the class. She's a goody two shoes, and people had this image of me just like a good person, and it like really affected me
Uh-huh.
because they'd be like, oh, like, yeah, someone like Nelly would not drink. Someone like Nelly, like, would not go somewhere and dance. Someone like Nelly would not like all these things they started like saying about my personality. And it's not even them saying it. It was just like the image that came
Right.
along
Yeah, yeah,
with,
yeah.
being like a studious, hardworking girl kind of
Yes.
thing. And it like continued on because like, I got this scholarship. I went to boarding school and I was like, yeah, I got to work really hard. And
Yeah.
it's really tough. And then I did that, and then I went to college, and that's where the issue began.
Uh-huh.
Because like there'd be things like I would like, for example, like see people doing Zumba, and I would like want to, and like part of me is like the voice would be like, go do Zumba, like this looks like so much fun. But then
Right.
this other part of me had already like formed a personality, which was like, oh no, like you're not gonna be good at dancing, like you're not good at that shit, like you're
I
good.
see.
Yeah, and then I became like very afraid of like, when people put you like on a pedestal as a smart person,
Uh-huh.
I became very afraid of like having failure. So, it would be simple things like, for example, Zumba, I'd be like, I'm gonna make a fool of myself. And at that time I
Mhm.
was like, oh no, that's like a dumb thing to do. or like in studies, like, I would study so hard. And when I didn't get the grade I wanted, or like I had difficulty understanding a concept, like I would put so much pressure on myself and I
Uh-huh.
started like hating things around me. So like part of me was like, oh, I hate this version of myself because I was like kind of following the path. I'm like, oh, I'm a good girl. I am like so hardworking, smart kid. I have to do these things to be successful in life. And I was following that path. But then another part of me was like, no, wait a minute, like that you don't have to like, do XYZ to like succeed in life or to have a happy life. And Jill, like the Indian culture in Kenya even, right? It's like they have like a criteria of what makes somebody a good person or a
Yes.
successful person.
Yes, they
And
do.
that's not it. That criteria is not true.
And you know what? What's really sucks is that these parents have all these criterias that they think that their children fit into, but in reality, if you could meet those kids the way we meet them, their parents would be in a shock of a lifetime. And I know this is like
Exactly.
for especially in Kenya, because it's a small country. And by small, I mean relatively smaller than, say, the United States. And so when you put a bunch of Indian people together that are like Patels or Shahs, they're inclined to know one another and they're inclined to have this competitive side of them just spark where their kids need to be better than the next person's kid. And that
Mhm.
toxic culture is what I don't think it's a parent's fault. I think it's that environment that was produced that made it like our parents didn't have a choice but to want us to be better than their friends or
Yeah.
someone else's child that we're competing in with school.
I mean, it's an environment that, like, quite visibly, like as you'd see, like academics are rewarded more than sport or any other
Yes. Yes.
activity.
Yes.
In school, like, only if you're like intelligent, you could get into a position of leadership.
Hmm.
And like, when well, I don't know about you, but like I was like kind of discouraged from even having hobbies because it was like, oh, it will like you lose your focus from study. So
For me, it was
yeah,
my parents were definitely so much more liberating. They were, I mean, yes, my mom wanted me to do very well with my education, but I was very sporty, drama, dancing, all these things that my mom made me go into, and I loved it. Like, she didn't just want me to be studious. She wanted me to do very well with my education, but not shy away from the rest of it. Personally, have the same experience you do, but I know what you're talking about because I've seen a lot of my classmates have gone through the same thing you're speaking of now, where their parents wouldn't encourage them to do anything else that would distract them from studying.
yeah. I used to do badminton and art, and like in those ones, like for badminton, like I was like in the national team, and for art, I'd won a lot of awards. But it's more in terms of like you're encouraged to pursue hobbies that you're gonna win an award at, or a
Ah,
hobby. Even the hobbies get competitive.
I see. I see. So nothing just for fun or nothing
So
just for expansion of your mind. I get it. Yeah. There has to be
mhm,
a winner at
yeah.
the end of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like I also remember this one time when I
Uh-huh.
like come down to Kenya for a holiday and it was like New Year's and we had gone like, we'd gone like to some club to like celebrate New Year's.
Mhm.
And there were like some former classmates who were like, they're like, oh my God, that's Nelly in a club. Like,
Oh
what
my
is she
god.
doing here? And I think this was around the time I was having an identity crisis and I could hear everything. So I think all that together just snapped in me.
I can understand. That must have been terrible. It's one thing to think that, it's another thing to say it, but it's the worst thing to say it when the other person can hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, they were probably saying it and they forgot they even said it, but the impact that it had, like, even now that you can talk about that particular point where they said that, and they probably don't even know that that sentence
Hmm.
had such a big impact on you.
That's actually crazy. I didn't think about that. But yeah.
Yeah, right? So, how did you deal with it?
So wait, let me tell you like the defining moment because I actually remember that. So I was in college. I had taken a minor in forensics and cybersecurity. And at that
Mm.
time, there were like two reasons why I was doing it. I also like I like watching the FBI spy stuff and I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna be a
Ooh.
hacker. And I was like, I want to do that. But then I found out really quickly that you actually have to be a US citizen to be able to do that fun stuff.
Mhm.
because like you need clearance and they don't give it to people who are not citizens. I was like,
Right.
oh, okay, that sucks. And my professor was like, "Because like, don't worry, like you can still do this profession, but like you can make a shit ton of money." And like I was still like, on that straight path. I was
Right.
like, oh my God, like, like you have to go to college, get a good job, make a shit ton of money, and then
Mhm.
you're successful in life.
Yeah.
So I was doing this minor. And it was just the beginning of my third year university. And I took like, 2 classes in this minor. And one of the classes was just so tough. And it was just a terrible class. It was even class. So the professor had told all of us, like, oh, the final exam is like right after Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
And I had fallen asleep at that time.
Oh, no.
And and like I didn't know. So I thought that the exam was like way into the future. So I went to class. I remember that day I was like, should I even go to class? I'm feeling
Oh
so
my
bad. Let me
god.
just go. So I went to class. And
Mhm.
then next thing I know, she's like, all of you put your books away. And I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, oh, the final today. And I hadn't studied anything at all.
Oh
And
my
the worst
god.
part was, like, I knew that even if I had studied, like, I still would know. I wouldn't know any more than I knew in that moment. Like, I just did not understand that class.
Right.
And I'll always, like, get top grade. I was like, "Oh my god," like, I always get top. I always understand things. Why am I not
Mhm.
understanding this? So I
Yeah.
failed the class, basically. I got like a C minus in that class. And if you get that grade, you're supposed to drop the
Mhm.
minor. So I dropped the minor and like, I was just in such a bad mood because I was so like, I was already in my third year and I was like, okay, what am I going to do in life? Like, I
Right.
failed this. I don't even know I'm not even good at my actual major. Like I didn't even know I wanted to do service design. So I was like having all this back and forth, like, what do I do? And I know I'm so bad at this. And part of me, part of me was like, oh, you should like get the textbook and study harder. And like, I don't know what happened. So at that moment in time, like, there's a voice in me. She was like, oh, you can just like get a book and study harder and redo this class. But then there was
Mhm.
another voice in me who was like, just fuck all this. I am
Yeah.
so tired. I'm so tired. Like, you know, I just
Mhm.
like keep becoming this version of myself that I don't like. And there's this other voice in me, which is, being like, do what you feel like. Do like, break this
Yeah.
mold that has been created for you. Because remember, this mold was in my head. I had put this mold in myself based on what I've been told by other people. And
Mhm.
that other voice in me was like, just like, just now do whatever you want. Like, just live life.
Yes.
I know you already failed this minor, right? Like, just drop out of this minor and just do classes that you like until you figure out what you want to do. And
Mhm.
that's exactly what I started doing. I just like signed up for classes that seemed interesting to me. And I didn't start, like, before I would do classes that seemed like the smart thing to do in college.
Right. Uh-huh.
And then changed to like, I'm just going to do classes that genuinely, not because I have any agenda, just because I'm interested.
Yeah.
And I took some really, really fun classes. And I'm so glad that happened because like if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have landed in this career of mine, which I really, really like. But I found myself like when I started taking classes that I just liked out of interest, I even like stopped looking at my grades because like whenever I would look at my grades, it would like put me down.
Mhm.
This used to happen before. So I never looked at my grades. And then at the end of the semester, like when I got my exam results, I was like shocked. Like when I stopped caring about my grades actually got higher
Uh-huh.
because I started like paying attention to the content and because it was interesting, like I just got better at it.
Yeah, because you enjoy it.
Yeah, because I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yes.
I think the also good thing is like, when you're in the US, like people don't know you. No one knows who
Oh,
you are. But
nobody
whereas in
knows
Kenya,
you.
people know you since you're young and they have expectations of you. So once I realized that, one of my friends actually told me that. It was like nobody knows you. You can do whatever you want. What are you afraid of?
And
And
I think that person is very right.
once I
But
understood that in Kenya, oh well, especially also the girl, you can drive, but you don't have that much freedom like you do in the US. You take a train, take an Uber, go wherever you want. No one's gonna worry as much as when you're in Kenya.
I agree. I was also given the liberty to drive. Even before I got my license, my dad let me drive. He would just tell me to go do stuff and I just go do it. And I remember this one time, it was like 11 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night. And my dad had gone out on Wednesdays. It's usually his club night. So he went out with his friends to do kuroga, in which means sort of like a barbecue at night. For those of you who don't know what kuroga means. But so he, Wednesday night was his night, guys' night out with his friends. And I was just me home alone. So I asked my mom if I could go and she's like, okay, fine, just be back by an hour. And so I left at like 10, came back at 11:50, and she just let me drive by myself. And I hadn't even got my license yet.
You're
So
so lucky.
yeah, like I said, my parents were more
I wish I
liberating.
had your parents. I'm 25, and as you guys know, the podcast, I'm back home in Kenya.
Yes.
Man, I'm not allowed. Like 7 p.m. if I'm not home, my phone starts ringing, and I'm just like, oh,
That's crazy. I think I would go mad. I would want to just punch a wall, because if that happened to me, like in Kenya, my parents wouldn't call me. We had a mutual understanding was that I would let them know where I was. All they needed to know where I was. And I think they got used to the fact that as teenagers or young adults, we don't usually have plans of what we're going to do. We just look at each other's faces and then be like, hey, let's just go here. And then you just go have ice cream, or you go have, drinks at our cafe, or you go to Karura Forest. I mean, you go anywhere.
can
So,
we swap parents? Like, can they adopt me?
I mean, yeah, I'm sure they wouldn't mind, considering my dad actually at 16 dropped me to the club. He said, I'm
Yeah.
going to drop you here and I will be back to pick you up at 2 o'clock. And I was like, oh, Dad, 2 o'clock? Are you kidding me? That's when the party starts. And he's like, do you want to go to the club or not? And I was like, yeah, I do. And he let me go. Even when I was supposed to buy my fake ID for Earth Dance, it was a
Mhm.
Kikoy culture. One of them, he gave me money to get a fake ID done, in which I then proceeded to buy. And then I showed him and I was like, look at this. This doesn't look real to you. And he's like, I think it'll work. So I mean, I'm really grateful that I've not had those moments, because I can understand the frustration that you're going through. I see where you're coming from when you talk about how all of this had led to your who am I situation.
Yeah. There's two voices.
Yeah, I can see that. Do you have that voice that you're talking about in my mind where I'm like, oh my God, is this something that's going to make my parents happy? Is this something that people are going to talk about? Like, it's still a very small part of me. And because I've escaped Kenya, I'm no longer scrutinized as I was back home, because here there are not a lot of people that know me, or a lot of people that have grown up with me that care about what I'm doing with my life or not. So there isn't that microscope, which I'm really grateful for.
Yeah.
Extremely grateful.
Yeah. I hate how those superficial things are the things people are celebrated for. How big is the house? How many cars do they have? What job title do they have?
Mhm.
I think that's all BS. Like the things that people need to be celebrated for is more internal things. Like what did they overcome?
Uh-huh.
What challenge did they set for themselves that they
Yes.
managed to
To
accomplish?
achieve.
Because yeah, and I also have cousins. I have a cousin who never went to college, and now she's leading in a field, and when I look at her, I'm like, damn,
Right?
she's achieved so much. But in other people's eyes, she never went to college. And I'm like, so? She's really awesome.
I think for our next topic of discussion or our next podcast, we really need to talk about whether going to college is something that is a good idea or it's something that isn't. Because I have a lot to say. I really want to get
I
into it with
agree.
you right now, but I don't want to get into it with you right now because I feel like this is some really
Yeah, I
juicy
know.
and spicy stuff, and it's going to take away from our topic right now. So I'm going to just note that down in my little calendar. Based on what you've told me about your identity crisis, how do you feel now?
So I feel like the two ways, the two responses to this.
Mhm.
So after I went through this, that I spent roughly 2.5 years in the US. I finished college and then I
Yes.
worked.
Mhm.
And by then, actually I think when I started choosing my own happiness, my own interests, and just I closed my eyes to what I defined as success and started defining it for myself. So when that happened, I was at my happiest.
Right.
I just like, the other voice, like it just went away. And I was like happy and I was able to be like authentic to myself, authentic to my friends. I was like able to like meet people and actually like, have a genuine connection because I knew who I was myself.
Mhm.
Whereas before, I didn't know who the hell I was. And I was able to like embrace a part of me that were weird and like try things and not be afraid of
Right.
embarrassment. And I think that's one thing that even like you have taught me. Like you're not afraid of doing anything. And that's nice.
I'm gonna tell you a little secret. I'm afraid. I
You
am
are?
terrified, but I don't think about it and I overcome it because I know at the end of that 30-second or 20-second of fear that I feel, the outcome of it is going to be fantastic. I know I'm scared now, but 20 seconds from now, I'm going to be so engrossed in what I'm doing at that time that I'm going to forget the fear and feel what I'm doing, whatever it may be. And I think that really helped me overcome, like, I'm afraid all the time. I'm just
Yeah.
a ball filled with fear and emotions. So I read this quote, 16, 15. Um, I was obsessed with Twitter. And the reason I was obsessed with Twitter was because I was obsessed with these accounts that posted quotes about life. So one of the quotes that I saw in there was sometimes all you need is 20 seconds of insane courage and 20 seconds of embarrassing bravery. And I promise you something great will come of it. And it's true.
I like that.
It's really true. It's like that's what the fear that you feel before you do the thing that you want to do will go away once you do it, and something insane will come of it. And I think that's what I think about when I'm scared. So it doesn't look like I'm scared. I'm not very good at showing that I'm scared, but I'm scared inside. Just next time when we're together, you'll see it now. Now that I've told you the secret, you'll see it.
I will see it.
Yes.
I remember. So for those who don't know, I like met Jill. I think it was roughly a year ago, and I like have this memory of where Jill was driving a car and then missed the car and we were next to some hills. And Jill was like, let's roll down these hills. And we went to the top of like a hill and we rolled down the hill.
Wasn't that fun though?
It was so fun.
That was really,
But you see, that's what I mean. Like, if I wanted to do that in Kenya, like the old version of me would have been like, what kind of dumb person does that? But then, like, when I started being like, I just want to do what I feel like doing, I was like, you know what? That sounds like fun. And if I look like a fool, if a car passes on the road and it's like, who are these fools doing that? I don't care. I'm enjoying myself.
And we did have a bunch of cars passing. Oh, that's fun. I'm going to watch those videos again after we have our conversation.
So to go back to your question, I did feel like a lot more happier. But also at that time, like, I was like living alone, like, with a roommate, with my friends. Like I was like among the best support system I
Right.
could be around.
Mhm.
And then I had a job, like, when I was working at Adidas, like I was like living by myself and like all these things that used to embarrass me, I was just like, yeah, and so. And I
Mhm.
think there's one thing to point out is like in in like Kenyan Indian culture, we have a lot of bullying. If somebody likes something, if somebody looks a certain way, people will always bully
Oh,
you for it.
yes.
But now, yeah, but now as an adult, I'm just like, so like, I don't care. If you want to make fun of me, make fun of me. I just don't care. And I think that's also one thing that changed that helped me like embrace this other side of me. But within like since the past 1 year, like, I had
Mhm.
come back to Kenya because of this whole COVID thing.
Yes.
And
That situation.
uh people yeah, and people remember the old version of me. And this new version is very hard to show people because to be honest, people
Uh-huh.
don't like it, like somebody who does what they want, says what's on their mind, goes
Yes.
and does something like without caring what society thinks, is still foreign over here. And I know like we have friends over here who are awesome and don't, shame and do those things, but the older generation still care a lot about what perception and society and all that crap. And
Yes.
right now, like, I still have like I don't have a crisis as such because like I know who I am and like I
Mhm.
embrace it and I stick to it. But like let's just say other people around me have a problem accepting that.
I can see that happening, especially because now you're back with people that you left behind that made you feel that way, that you had to come to up to a point where you were like, who am I? Am I what these people are saying, or am I my own version? And to have to overcome that and be so comfortable with yourself and go back to where you started and have all these people, like you said, shame you for liking something or not liking something, or the way you look or the way you don't look, it probably is very difficult.
It still is. It's but the good thing is like now I don't know if it's I think it might come with age. Like, you're
Uh-huh.
able to be like, I don't care. I simply don't care because you have been around people who accept you. You have been around supportive people. So
Yes.
you know that you're not like an odd one. You know that, you're just fine the way you are. But yeah, the difficult part is where like people like the old version more. People like the more submissive
Oh,
version. People
yes.
like the good, like the goody two shoe version. And it's very hard for them to realize that, that like a change has happened and like I don't have an intention of going back.
I think there are a lot of schmucks in Nairobi.
You know what? I shouldn't say that.
I was waiting. I literally gave you so much time. There were so many times where you could have referenced that
I
word.
know. I forgot. I forgot about the challenge.
Okay, I'm gonna give myself a cookie. I think I'll give myself a cookie. All right,
Yeah.
sorry. I got distracted by that. Um, I'm not taking it back though. Putting that out there.
Okay, if they don't like it, if you say it, I'll say it. A bunch of your schmuck.
Yes. Well, now that I guess you're at that point where you're so comfortable with who you are and you're confident with who you are. How does that feel? If you were
Oh,
to
it
go back
feels
to tell your old self something right now, based on what you've learned and what you've overcome and how you are as a person today with so comfortable
Mhm.
and so confident in your own skin, what are you going to tell your younger self or someone else who's going through such an identity crisis?
First of all, you get peace of mind.
Uh-huh.
Second of all, like you like really develop self-love because it just feels so nice to be comfortable in your own skin. So a
Yes.
piece of advice I would give is, first of all, whatever mold you built for yourself, ask yourself, where the hell did that mold come from? Is it from what people are saying?
Mhm.
Is it from your perception of what a successful person should like look like? Is it from the things teachers tell you, your peers tell you, your family tells you? If it's from anyone else apart from you, like get rid of that shit. Get rid of that mold. Choose things that make you happy. Like, if you do this activity and you're not sure how you feel about it, if you don't enjoy it, you don't have to do it. If you see something and you're like, that looks interesting, and everyone else like makes fun of you and they'd
Uh-huh.
be like, you look like a thing like that. Honestly, just don't care. Like, just do it. And what will they do? They'll laugh at you. So what? Like, it's like it's a bad sign on
Right.
them. They're laughing at you. Just pick something that makes you feel happy. And then from there, like you start developing yourself and your character. And
Mhm.
also like, I'm not saying like don't like look up to successful people, but I'm like, if you have role models, like try and have role models for like, broken boundaries, broken stereotypes, and then read their stories, and you will see that they experienced so much failure and they went through like, they were not conventional people, and
Right.
they were like, beautiful in their own way. So like when you look up to those people, you start embracing yourself more.
Mhm. That's true. The part you said about role models is very crucial. Depending on who you look up to, you do a lot of things in a very similar way. We emulate a lot. Like the people we like, the people who we see as our idols or stuff that I mean, this is one of the reasons why a lot of companies will hire superstars and athletes basically to advertise their products because we like to idolize and emulate people that we love and we look up to. So if they wear a certain type of shoe, we'll wear a certain type of shoe. And this isn't just about the clothing as well. This is like internal as well. If you see your idol going a certain path, you will be inclined to try something very similar to that. So I agree with what you have to say. I think
Yeah.
having the role models is essential.
Also, like I think for me, social media plays a big role. Like
Yeah.
I'm always on Instagram,
Uh,
and like the accounts I follow, I like I've become very intentional about the accounts I follow. I like follow accounts about topics I want to learn more about. I follow accounts about a lot of them is like women, Asian women breaking stereotypes, breaking generational curses and stuff like that. So
Yes.
when I read these stories, when I am surrounded by these things, I actually feel stronger. And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, okay, I'm not the only one. You know, like there's like I feel like there's a community with me, breaking things, like, trying to disrupt the narrative. And I personally like having those that like I like consuming, like choosing the type of media I want to consume. And like when I like, choose intentionally like those kind of role models, that
Yes.
kind of social media, it also like affects a lot the way I think.
Yeah, it probably lifts you up as well. It gives you a sense of positive, I wouldn't say vibes, but like a sense of hope and opportunity as well. Like you're not just
Yeah.
left down there. There are a lot of opportunities for people like us, people who want to be more than what everyone thinks they need to be.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's great.
That's true.
I had no idea you went through such an incredible transformation. I really like this version of you. I haven't met the older version, but this one is, I'm gonna say Naily 2.0.
I also like this version a lot more.
I
It
mean,
makes me a lot more happier.
well, you know what? That's all that matters to me, and I'm sure that's all that matters to you too. You need to be happy. So I'm so glad that you went through everything in your life because it got you to where you are today and who you are today. Last question about this. Do you regret, or do you ever feel like, I wish I never had to go through the mold that you were put in? Or do you wish that anything in your past had never happened?
I mean, yes and no. So like no, because I know I had to get through it
Uh
to
huh.
become this version now. And
Yes.
like, I'm pretty young. I'm only like 24, and I feel like some people waste a lot of time and waste some people spend a lot of time finding out who they are, right?
Yes.
And I was lucky to do it still at such a young age because now I have all these years, building who I am, knowing who I am, being happy with who I am. So no, I know. I mean, I had to go through that to get
Hmm.
here,
Yes.
and it's a lot of like it's a lot of thinking. There's like a lot of things we follow, and there's a lot of things we follow, and then there's a lot of behaviors that we emulate without thinking as to why we're doing this. There's a lot of beliefs we follow, like, just because your parents told you, just because you
Hmm.
heard it somewhere without thinking. And for you to go through that transformation, you have to like literally think about, like, is that right? Like, why are you thinking that way? And you have to like reverse it or break it. Like, be like, that stuff is not true. You need to think about it in another way.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I went through it. And the one of like the part where I say that yes, I regretted that. I mean, it's a like it's like a long thing, and it's like an emotional journey to get through. And I'm like, if there's a shortcut, like why couldn't I just post with this shortcut? But then I know I know there's no way. If there's a shortcut, then you wouldn't have. Then it would be harder for you to like. It would be easier. I guess it would be easier for me to go back to my old self
Yes.
because then I wouldn't have put in this amount of thought and effort.
I mean, I think there's a good analogy for that. The higher the mountain, the better the view. So when you get to that top of the
Yes.
mountain, all that hard work and all that suffering that you did makes everything worth it because of that view that you've just achieved there. So I think that's exactly what you went through. And now you have this breathtaking view for the rest of your life. And I think that's wonderful.
You have to keep building.
Yes, it's definitely not. So you get higher and higher. And the higher you get, the better that view is going to get. So, like you said, for now at 24, I think you have a pretty amazing view to build on.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for that wonderful insight into your life. I'm really glad that I got to have that insight as well. And I'm sure a lot of people will be very thankful for that. Help them get through something that they wish they'd known more about, and to let them know that it's not the end of the world, that you're going to come out of it like Neely did on top of the highest mountain that you can find. Um, and speaking of, tell me, is there a place in Kenya? Like you're in Kenya right now, right?
Mhm.
So I usually like doing this thing where I talk about a place. So I spoke about Kenya in one of the podcasts previously, where it's like the heart of Africa is what they call it. I don't know if that's just us being narcissistic about ourselves, or is that what the world calls it? But we're just gonna stick for the sake of this podcast. We're just gonna stick to Kenya being the heart of Africa. And do you have a place that you want us to talk about, or do you have a place that you want everyone to know about?
Yeah. So there's this place. It's called Karura Forest. It's in
Mhm.
Nairobi, and during this past year, especially because of the pandemic, you can't just travel around, or well, people do, but it's not really safe to travel
Yes.
around. So I have been going to Karura Forest like almost every weekend,
Uh huh.
and I just really enjoy going there. It's so peaceful. It lets you disconnect. It's like there's like a lot of nature. It's like all nature.
Uh huh.
And I've been like finding like trails that I have lived in Kenya for like more almost I would say 18 years now, with all the years added up. And
Yeah.
there were trails in there like this entire time I lived in Kenya that I didn't know about. But then this past year, I have like found so many trails that I never went to before, and places that are just beautiful. Like, you can just go down,
Yes.
sit with a book, and just relax.
Yeah. And then you get away from all the hustle and bustle of the city, and you're just in a peaceful environment with fresh air, and
Yeah.
you go to like River Cafe.
Yes. They have a caramel latte, which is so good.
Really? Yeah.
So crazy that when you're in there, you feel like you feel like you're in another world. Like, you don't feel like you're in a capital city, but you
Right.
are still in Nairobi.
I know you have some really nice pictures of Kura Forest, right?
Yes, I
Okay.
do.
I'd like you to send them to me so I can feature them on the social medias.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll send a picture of Amit walking in the
Okay.
forest.
Yes, do send that. I would like to see I would like to see that. Okay, well, I think this is it for us, Neely, for this
Okay.
very wonderful podcast. I'm gonna see you again, and we're gonna talk about college. I mean, I have a bunch of topics we're gonna talk about, but for now,
I
thank you.
like having these conversations.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Even
there's
if
so
it's
much
off
off
podcast,
podcast.
we can
Yes,
talk about anything.
yes. I think this is very important because I had no idea about this. I think every time we talk about stuff, we just talk about really dumb shit where we're like, "Oh my god, I saw." I don't know what dumb shit do we talk. I can't even think of a reference because I know we talk about a lot of silly things.
Because like at that time we haven't seen and we want to know we want to know like I guess the juicy stuff, or what do we did
Oh
that
yeah, yeah.
this and that.
I
It's
think
because we have so much to talk about. We need to talk about more so then we have less to talk about.
I agree. I don't think there's ever going to be a point where we run out of topics to talk about because, I mean, I don't know if this is, I speak for myself in this situation, but there are very few people, I mean, a handful of people, I think I can fit them in the palm of my hand. And I mean, numerically, not physically fit them
Yeah.
on the palm of my hand. But I think there are very few people that I can have a conversation about anything, like intellectual conversation, or we can go from being like really intellectual to goldfish dumb. And I think you're one of those very few people that I can get best of both worlds with. Otherwise, it's always one or the other. It's never both, or it's either just like in between where it's like when it comes to a conversation, I think it's just happening for the sake of for them not to be any silence. I'm just gonna say yes so we don't doesn't turn into an argument which you're gonna get offended by and then just hate me for the rest of your life. So
Yeah.
to save both of us the trouble, I'm just gonna keep my mouth shut and agree with what you have to say, or just nod my head in agreement or that I'm listening. But yeah, so I think
Let me learn about other stuff
yes.
apart from the stuff that you've grown up with, because like there's so many things that I thought like this is the only way, because that was a reality I grew up with. And then
Yeah.
when I have those conversations, I realized that, wait a minute, I'm wrong, or I didn't think about this perspective. And you just grow as a person. I feel like that's made me more like open minded about people and more accommodating of
Yes.
them.
I think the reason that happens is when you travel outside of the place that you grew up in and you go see different worlds and different perspectives and the way people around the world live, it lets you open your mind to the different types of way of life.
Yeah.
not just to the single one that you've seen watching it on TV is really different to going there in person and feeling it, right? Which is why I'm really excited for the trip that we're having this year. I'm just letting you
Yes.
know that I'm very excited about it. Although the location has not yet been set. Guys, we're going somewhere. So if you
Well,
have any
I'm
suggestions,
waiting for my visa. I'm waiting for my visa to come back. It should be back within a month, within like literally 8 days. My Denmark visa.
yeah. Okay, also, Aneli's got this fancy new job in Denmark. Look at her
Yes, I
rolling.
can.
So she's going to go to
I'm
Denmark,
so
and
excited to go.
I'm so excited for you to go, which means I can just come and live with you. That's what I can do.
Yeah, it's
Um,
crazy. Like that's the fifth country I'm staying in
that's
within the past
amazing.
7 years.
Do you know how fantastic that is? Like I want to be able to do that. I've only lived in 3 countries, which sounds like baby stuff in front of you because
No,
yes. And by lived in 3 countries, I mean Kenya is not counted because I grew up in there. So I was with my
Yeah.
parents, and then, now it's not counted because I'm still here, not in Kenya, but, in the States. And India was counted because I was there because of COVID.
You were there for such a long time.
I was there forever. I was there
So
forever.
long.
But yes, so I was saying, if you guys have any idea of where we should go, please do let us know. Open to ideas of anywhere in the world. Also, we're not yet rolling money, so cheap be nice as well.
We appreciate sponsors.
Yes.
Can sponsor us in any way. They come to your location.
Anywhere.
I do photography. Jill does a lot of talking.
Yes. You will be entertained and have beautiful pictures by the end of it. So if that's what you're looking for, you know where to go. I'll speak to you soon.